Hi folks, I hope you're all doing really well. It's been well over a year since I produced a YouTube video, and so I thought it was about time I showed my face on here again. The main reason for that has been the launch of our big online frame weaving course, which launched in November last year, and it's been quite well received. We've got over 200 students currently online, and it's just been really wonderful managing that and seeing people's weaving come on. I wanted to sort of break the back of producing videos again with a really simple project, and Frankie, my daughter, 4-year-old daughter's nursery, asked me to pop in towards the end of her time there and teach her class how to weave. And so I had a really good think about what would work, because most of them don't have any experience or much experience with textiles, and certainly not weaving. And so I made lots of these little cardboard cutout looms. It's very simply a cardboard shape cut out, and then with the yarn, the warp yarn, which are all the tension threads wrapped around the cardboard. And then you're leaving the weaving on the loom at the end, which I think is crucial, especially with the younger children, that they haven't got that extra process at the end where they're having to take it off. Because if they've started losing concentration by the end of it, you've lost them if you're trying to get them to do anything else. So I chose fish because it was a really simple shape to cut out, and I had lots of them to cut out. But that's an example with a llama. If I'd had my way and I had more time, I would have done lots of llamas, because I just think they're so lovely. But Frankie's initial request was a unicorn, and I certainly wasn't up for cutting out 18 of those. So it just shows you that you can cut out any shape you like, really, as long as you can wrap the string around one section of it, you're good to go. So I really hope you enjoy this project as much as I've enjoyed putting it together. You absolutely don't have to have a huge stash of yarn to complete it. This fish here is woven with just strips of paper that I cut out of a crochet magazine, so they're quite bright. But you really can just work with whatever you have lying around. A nice little touch at the end is to name them, which was absolutely hilarious at nursery, because they were all sort of copying the name of the person in front and then adding a name on as well. So there was a whole shoal of fish with some terribly elaborate names. But yeah, happy weaving, folks, and let me know how you get on in the comments below. So the materials that you'll need to complete this project are all laid out here on the table. You've got your fish template, and I just googled free fish templates on Google, and it comes up with loads of options. I chose this one because it's a really nice simple shape and really easy to cut around. What you don't want is something that you're really going to have a lot of fiddly little pieces to get your scissors round, or if you're using a Stanley knife, your Stanley knife round. So that's just printed off A4 size. It's a nice manageable size to work with. I've got a piece of cardboard, as you can see, really not very thick at all. You can go quite a bit thicker than this, but this is just what I had lying around. We've got string to make your warp with. Your warp yarn is going to be the yarn that you wrap around your cardboard template, and then you'll weave your material through the warp. This one is a cabled cotton, which is quite strong, but you could go with garden twine, or even just any bits of sort of scrap yarn that you have lying around, bits of wool from leftover projects, anything really. A pen to draw around your template once we've cut it out. Scissors, I've got a couple of different sizes here. Either will do to cut your template out initially, and if you're not using a Stanley knife, to cut around the shape in cardboard. We've got a Stanley knife and a cutting mat here because I just find it easier to cut the shape out, but it depends. If you're doing it with your child, you might just want to stick with scissors. I've got tapestry needles here the chunky ones with a really big eye on them are really useful for bigger yarns if you're using those. Not essential, because with this project you can just use your fingers to weave the yarn through. And finally, I've got some luggage tags, which are completely not essential, but just really fun at the end of the project to name your fish or whatever animal you've decided to do. I've got here then a big basket of all my scrappy leftover bits of yarn that I'm going to use to weave the body of the fish. And I realise I'm completely spoilt for choice, being a textile designer, but you can really use anything for this project. You can cut strips of paper out, you can cut up an old t-shirt, so you don't have to have a magic basket of yarn lying around. You can just really work with the materials that you've got lying around at home. The first thing you're going to do is cut around your fish template. Then take your card, pop your fish on top, and then take your pen and draw around your fish template. Now, because I was doing lots of these for my daughter's nursery, I actually stuck the paper onto the cardboard to make a cardboard template to make it stronger. But if you're just doing one, I think that's probably overkill, and you can just use the paper to draw around. If you're doing more than one, you can then move your fish around so you can fit multiples in on the same piece of cardboard. Then, using your scissors or a Stanley knife on the cutting mat, I'm going to use the Stanley knife because I just find it a bit easier. You can cut round your template. Now you've got your cardboard cutouts, we're going to just work with one here. We're going to put around about 6 strings over. We're going to wrap that string around 6 times. So you don't have to mark it with a pen, but if you feel more comfortable doing it like that, that's absolutely fine. And you're going to make about 6 dashes over the top and along the bottom. So you can almost sort of draw them top 1 and 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5, and 6. And I think these guys are about 1.5 centimeters apart. You can do them closer together, but the more strings you have, the more weaving you're going to do. So I'd suggest, if you've not done it before, to start with them nice and spaced apart, and you'll create less work for yourself. Now, taking your string, you want to pull quite a decent amount off. We'll just sit that there and flip it over to the back. I'm going to use the side that's got all my pen marks in at the back. And I'm going to leave quite a long tail because you're going to tie it onto the tail that you end up with on the end. So I'm going to leave quite a long tail, that's probably about 10 inches, and just slot it into either side is fine, just one end at the top or bottom of the little slit, and then flip it back over to the front. Pop that there, and then keeping a good amount of tension on that string, you're going to bring it down to the slit at the bottom, and then bring it round the back and through the next slit along the top. And then you're just going to keep going. You need to unravel a bit more string, and then just keep wrapping that round until you've got all your threads over the surface there. And then you're going to leave a decent tail at the end there as well. Snip that off. And then simply tie the two loose tails together at the back. And I'm just going to do that in a double knot to make absolutely sure it doesn't come undone while we're weaving, and just trim that down. So you've now got your warp threads ready to start weaving on. So I'm now going to grab my box of yarns here, and I'm going to add in, I quite like these little tassels along the bottom, and they give it a little bit of movement. And so I'm just going to cut a piece off, same width plus a couple of inches on either side. We'll just trim that off there. And then I'm going to cut the tassels off that aren't sitting within this warp area. So we'll just trim those off, and we'll trim them off on this side as well. And we're going to weave this through the warp threads. So we'll start at one side, and we're going to start by going under or over, and then go under, over, or over, under, all the way through the warp threads. So we'll start here by going under, and then over, under, over, under, over. And these tassels do get a little bit stuck, so you'll have to lift up the warp threads to wiggle them through a little bit. And then we'll just pull them through and wiggle that down. You can pull the tassels down and just wiggle that right down to the bottom. And then to tidy away the edges, you're going to do the opposite of what's happened on this row below. So where this piece of tassel tape here is coming out underneath that warp, you're going to bring it over the top and then underneath. And then what you can do with these is just slide it down underneath like that, just to keep it out of the way. And the same on this side, it comes out over the top of this last warp end. So you're going to then bring that underneath, bring that through. It can go over the top of the next one, and then just tuck away down underneath. Might be a bit long, that one, so we'll trim it down a little bit, and you can use the end of your scissors and just tuck that underneath like that. You can see here where I've come to the end of my length of yarn that I've got this little tail to tidy away. So I can go ahead and do that. I'll probably take the tapestry needle off as it'll be easier with my fingers, and I'll just tuck that under, over, and then I'll post that. I'm going to use the end of the tapestry needle just to post that yarn down the back of your weaving there. And then I'm going to select my next piece of yarn to pop in over the top. My next yarn, I'm going to go with something a bit more textured. I'm going to use this recycled banana yarn. This one in particular is naturally dyed with weld, which grows like a weed in the UK, and gives these really lovely yellows. It gives everything from really acid yellow through to sort of more primrosy tones. So I'm just going to take a little piece of that, and in the same way that I've done these other two, I'm going to weave it all the way through to build up my next little block of colour. Now you can see as I near the top here that it's definitely easier using the tapestry needle, but again, it depends on what yarn you're using as to how easy it is to post it through with your fingers. And you don't have to go all the way up to the top. We're just going to go, that's under, so over, under. We're just going to do one more row along the top here. So we'll go up under there. And then she will come back over this way. And then we'll probably just post this last one all the way down through. And I'm just going to bring that needle back up there. And you can just trim it off at the front there. And that'll be hidden down behind your picks of weaving, your rows of weaving. There we go. So there we go, little fishy with some leftover pieces of yarn. But like I said, if you don't have yarn, you can also use bits of paper. I've cut up a crochet magazine here, so it's nice and colourful. And I've just cut random size strips, long enough to go over the warp, the width of the warp, but random thicknesses, and I'm just going to weave them through to show you that you can use paper as well. So I've got my blank cardboard loom here, and I'm going to take, let's start with a nice bright piece. I've got several here. I'm going to start with this piece, and we're going to weave under, over, under, over, under, over, and then I'm just going to wiggle that right down to the bottom. Now with your second piece, so I'm going to use a slightly contrasting colour, we're going to do the opposite, and so where that one comes out underneath the warp end, we're going to go up over the top, so over, under, over, under, over and under, and then just wiggle that down to the bottom. And I'm just going to keep going now until I can't fit any more paper in. So there you go, little paper woven fishy. And what you would then want to do just to tidy it up is to slide your scissors up underneath and just give him a little trim up the edge so that you can actually see his face and maybe draw an eye on him. And then you can do the same at the back there. It's a little bit neater like that. And so I'm just going to get my pen and give them an eye each. Maybe some gills. I think this one can be asleep. I'll give that some gills as well. I'm now going to completely unnecessarily name them. She's going to be Susan the Sleepy Sardine. I think she looks like a Susan. And this dude up here, he is going to be Albert the Alert Anchovy. That is how you spell anchovy, I hope. And then I'm going to just wiggle that name tag through probably the back one so it's not covering up too much of the weaving, so you can just slide it through the slot that the warp string went through, and that should stay in place. But if you want to make absolutely sure it doesn't go anywhere, you could grab a bit of tape and just stick it on the back there to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. There we go. Off they swim.